Hi everyone and welcome to Book Boop. My name is Rachel and today, we're gonna try to dig our way into some of the books that I read over the past few months. I have a lot of books that I read and I haven't gotten to review any of them with you. So we're gonna be jumping back to books that I read in June, I believe, and maybe a little bit of May. And we're gonna be going through the Baker's Dozen today, 13 books. I'm going to be honest, a lot of these books, when I went back to see like which ones I needed to review still, it feels like I read them a lifetime ago. And some of them I was like, what were they about again? What did I think about these books? So to be honest, these reviews are going to be short and sweet and snappy because I'm going to give very basic overviews of what the book is about and probably very basic reviews because I don't remember. I had to write down the list of books and what stars I gave them, because I don't remember. So we're gonna go through 13 different books today, so buckle in, let's get going. All right, so the first two books, I'm going to kind of meld into one review, because if you've been on my channel at all this year, you'll know that I've been reading through the Keeper of the Lost series by Shannon Messenger, and it is a middle grade fantasy series with a lot of books. I think there are 9 books out now, and I think the 10th book is coming out really, really soon, and I don't know if that's the last one or not. It just keeps going. They're all chunkers. The overarching story is about this girl, and she is having a lot of trouble with the fact that she can hear people's thoughts. She's also super smart, and she has horrible headaches because she's just being bombarded by people's thoughts all the time. Come to find out, she's not even human. She's actually an elf, and she gets whisked away to the elven world, and she goes to a magic school, and lots of other things, and political intrigue happen. Very much Harry Potter vibes. So if you love Harry Potter, you probably will really enjoy this series. I promise none of those are spoilers. Those are all in the description of the first book. But to be honest, all the books are blending together. I read Neverseen, which I love these covers. They're so cool looking. So I read Neverseen, which I don't even remember what book that is, 5 maybe. And then also Lodestar. So I read both of those. I don't remember what happens in each one specifically because they are all blurring together, to be completely honest. I feel like I can't really talk about them specifically anyways because it'd be like massive spoilers because it's pretty far along in the series. But I'm enjoying it a lot. I gave both of them 4.5 stars. Let me double check on that. Let's see, Neverseen 4.5 and Lodestar 4.5. Yeah, so I'm really loving the series a lot. It's great. I would say the only thing that I'm having a little bit of trouble with this series is that all of the books, the plots move very, very fast, which is great because these big chunky books, you feel like you fly through them a lot faster than you expect because the plot's very fast paced. However, I feel like I'm starting to get a little bit desensitized to a lot of the plot twists and sort of surprises because there's so much that happens in these books all the time. It is just breakneck speed. So a lot of times I don't think some of the heavy hitting moments hit as hard as they should because I feel almost desensitized because there's just so many things happening all the time. But it's still a very good series. I'm very impressed about this world that Shannon Messenger has created. There's just so much, it's so intricate. Just the magic systems, the political stuff going on. It's fascinating. It's a very fascinating world and very well laid out and very detailed. And I think it's great. So I'm enjoying this series a lot still. I am currently, I think I finished reading book 7 or 8 recently. So I'm getting along in there. I'm catching up to hopefully get to the point where I'm at the newer books, which will be really, really fun. So I'm really enjoying that series a lot. Let's see what I'm talking about next. Okay, so this is the 3rd book in a series that I honestly thought I had already talked to you all about already because I was like, oh, I still need to talk about this one. I feel like I finished the series an extremely long time ago. And that is The Storm of Echoes by Christelle Dabos. This is the 4th book in the Mirror Visitor series, and it is a translated work from French. And this entire series is about a girl who has the ability to travel through mirrors. It's set in, I would say, like a futuristic society where the planet itself has basically broken apart and chunks of our planet are now floating. And people live on these different chunks and they're kind of their own mini kingdoms, and each group of people on each chunk have different abilities. And from where this girl comes from, people have the ability to manipulate objects, to read objects. She also has the ability to touch an object and to see its history, to see who's touched that object and what's happened around that object. And also she's able to travel through mirrors as well. She ends up in a politically arranged marriage to move to a different spire or a different floating chunk of earth. And when she is married off, it's extremely different type of place than where she's lived before. A whole lot of just political unrest and intrigue. There's a really interesting magic system in this whole world. I really enjoyed this series. It's very intricate and very interesting. I will say that the fourth book was probably my least favorite, which is, I would say, common for most people that have read this series. I went into this book with very low expectations because a lot of people were not happy with the last book and how the series ended. I would say I wasn't necessarily satisfied with the ending of this series. I didn't hate it though, probably because I was anticipating it wasn't going to be something that I would love, because a lot of people didn't love it. And I would say that as well. I didn't necessarily love the ending. I didn't necessarily love where our characters ended up. But I did like the series as a whole. I would say I probably enjoyed the first few books more and was just honestly reading the last few books out of obligation in a way. I wanted to finish the series because I wanted to see what eventually happened. But I will say at this point in this series, by the third and fourth book, I wasn't as invested in it. But I still think it's a great series. If you I think this is set more of a young adult, but to me it read very adult fantasy to me, not because it had adult themes in it, but because it just felt very, very much like a complex world. So if you like complete complex world building with fantasy, I would recommend this series. It's not hard to understand though. I'm not saying complex, like it's hard to grasp. It's interesting. It's a very intricate and interesting world. So I do recommend it. It wasn't necessarily my favorite series. What did I give it? Let's see. I gave it 3.5, which I think is the lowest I gave out of all the books in the series. So, but it was still really good. It was really good. Okay. Now I can leave that series behind me because I feel like I didn't remember most of the stuff that happened in the last few. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump to the next one. This is one I actually have physically for now. I'm planning on unhauling it, which tells you what I thought about it. And that is the Trilogy of Two by Juman Malouf. I apologize. That's probably not even close to the correct pronunciation. This is a middle grade fantasy. I guess I could say it's a fantasy. It's following these twin sisters who live and work within a circus, and they have a magical ability with their gift of music. They both are able to play music beautifully. I think one of them plays the piano, one of them plays the flute, I think. And they're incredibly gifted at their ability to the point where when they play music, magical things happen. And all of a sudden, other children, including themselves, who have magical abilities with music or some kind of really fantastic gift, they lose their gifts. Their gifts are being stolen, and all of a sudden they don't have the ability to play music anymore, and there's this whole plot and everything. I was so excited about this one because the premise sounded really cool. I love stories that are centered around music and music having some magical properties to it. I'm a musician myself, so I always love reading stories like that. However, this tended to drift more into a fae and almost kind of mythology type feel, which is not something I particularly love. I don't like it when things sort of start to drift into kind of that mythology. It's just not my vibe. And I didn't really like the writing style. I didn't really like where the story was going. I know that's very vague, and honestly, it's because I don't remember a lot of what happened. I read it a while ago, and also I just didn't like it. I gave this book 2 stars. It's such a pretty book, and it's got really pretty illustrations in it. I can't talk. Here's an example of one. There's just some pretty sort of pencil drawn illustrations in here that are just really, really nice. So I wish I loved this book, and this is one that I wanted to read for a really long time, but I didn't end up liking it, which is kind of a bummer. So I'm actually going to be unhauling that book. All right, let's see what's next. Okay, this is one I'm excited to talk about because I kind of had forgotten about it in a way, and then when I was reminded about this book, oh hey, yeah, I did read this. This one was a lot of fun. And that is Harrow Lake by Ellis. I think this is such a cool cover. It's just so creepy, and I love it. I love reading spooky books. So in this story, we are following the daughter of a famous film director, and this film director is famous for his horror films. And he filmed his most famous horror film in the town of Harrow Lake. Harrow Lake has completely, they've just completely accepted this fame on their town for this movie, and they actually have a festival every single year centered on this movie, and a section of the movie takes place during a fair, and so they recreate this fair every year. And during the filming, some very strange things happened, and it was, anyways, there's supposed to be some creepy things having to do with this town. So this filmmaker's daughter ends up traveling to the town. I can't remember why at this point, but she ends up traveling to the town and kind of trying to find out what happened to her mother who was in the film, what happened with her father, what happened with the film crew, because I think some of the film crew actually disappeared during the filming. Like, lots of creepy stuff happened. And so she's going to this town, and it happens to be during the time where they're like throwing this festival, so a lot of people are dressing like the characters for the movie and all this stuff, and you just kind of get this mystery of surrounding this movie, surrounding this film director, surrounding this girl's family, and the atmosphere is so fantastic. I loved the atmosphere, the small town vibe atmosphere where everybody knows everybody's business, but everybody's hiding something, and it's spooky. And I really enjoyed it a lot. I had such a great time with this book. I highly recommend. What did I give it? Let's see. I gave it 4.5, so I almost gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. This one was fun. And I loved the twists and turns it took. And I could see myself reading this one again and definitely recommending it. So highly recommend Harrow Lake. This is a fantastic one for the fall if you're looking for some nice spooky fall reads. All right, next, let me pull up the picture for you on my tablet here since I don't physically have it. If I can get the screen to turn back on. There we go. All right, so this is a novella that I planned to read a little bit earlier in the year, and then I didn't get to it until June. It's actually a series. I don't think I'm going to particularly continue in the series, but it had a really interesting concept, and it's called The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson. The general premise about this particular novella is we were following this girl named Molly Southbourne, and every time that she bleeds, a doppelganger of herself or a clone of herself is born, and that clone eventually, within a relatively short period of time, will try to murder the original Molly. So every time she bleeds, like every time she gets, well, here she's got nosebleed, every time she gets a little cut, even if it's just like a little paper cut and she has a small drop of blood, or unfortunately whenever she gets her period or that kind of thing, she ends up, these other Mollys are born, and every time from when she's a child all the way until just her whole life, like her parents have had to like deal with having to basically constantly murder all these copies of their child to keep their actual child alive. Very interesting concept, right? It sounds really cool. I didn't end up liking it as much as I would have liked. I can't remember exactly what about it I didn't like that much, but it was kind of middle of the road for me. I gave it 3 stars. So yeah, it was just kind of middle of the road. Interesting concept. It just didn't hit the mark. And I can't remember why it didn't hit the mark. See what I'm saying when I don't remember what happened in some of these? It didn't hit the way I hoped it would, so it's not making me want to continue the series. I felt like this ended in a way that was comfortable. Like I felt like, okay, I feel satisfied with this. I don't feel like I need to continue. But it was an interesting concept, creepy concept. It was kind of cool, but not amazing. So 3 stars for me. All right, now let's talk about a 5-star. You guys, I'm loving this book so much, and I need to continue the series. It is a trilogy, and if you haven't read it yet, you need to. And it is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I'm sure you've heard of this book. It's all over BookTube. I feel like everybody else has already read it, so I know I'm late to the game, but my goodness, you guys. If you like murder mysteries, look no further. This is a YA murder mystery series, and we are following a girl who is in her senior year in high school, I believe, and as her senior project, she has chosen to basically study and learn more about a murder that happened in her town. So when she was, I think, a freshman or a sophomore in high school, this girl in her school was murdered by her boyfriend, and then her boyfriend committed suicide. And in like I think a suicide note or something like that, he said that he had killed his girlfriend. And everybody believes that the boyfriend killed the girlfriend, closed case, whatever. The thing is that her main character, she knew this guy, not like super well, but she knew him relatively well, and she doesn't think he did it. And she is wanting to prove that he didn't. And so she goes down the road of trying to delve into this closed case that to her, she thinks is not closed. She thinks that it's incorrect. And it was so much fun. There were so many twists and turns in the story. I loved the main character. I loved the fact that she was a good girl. She was all about her good grades, and she didn't get into trouble or anything, but she starts having to go down these dark roads to be able to keep following this case, to find out what happened. And I was blown away by the story. There were so many things that happened in this book that I was not expecting. I was not expecting the conclusion. This is a mystery within itself. So the mystery begins and finishes within this one book. But there are 2 more books, I believe, following our same character who probably most likely tries to solve other murders, I believe. I definitely need to read more because my goodness, this was fantastic. I loved it. It was unexpected, fun. I loved the friendships in this book. I really loved it. It was so good. And I just had a great time with it. So yeah, if you like murder mysteries, please give this a try because it was a freaking blast. 5 stars. It was so good. And I like I said, I've got to get to the other 2. Okay, we're doing good, people. The next one, this is another one I'm going to unhaul. It's The Language of Ghosts by Heather Fawcett. This cover originally really pulled me in. I thought it was really pretty. Anything that has ghost in the title, I'm immediately like, what is that book? I need to know what that's about because I love ghost stories and I love ghosts. This is not a ghost story specifically. This is a fantasy middle grade. We are following our main girl, and she has an older brother, younger sister. Her parents or mother, I remember her mother was the queen of some kingdom, and there was some coup and they were overthrown, and these 3 kids, they ran away to an island to hide, basically to keep from being killed because they were trying to wipe out this royal family. And so in this world, these kids, at least the older brother, has magic. He's the one that's supposed to kind of be the one to be on the throne next, and they're wanting to see if they can get their kingdom back. That's really kind of all I remember about this. I remember that there is a possibility, like the middle sister who we're following, she's worried that her brother is going to turn out evil. I think it's supposed to be prophesied with the type of magic, that ability he has, that he will end up becoming bad. And so she's trying to prevent that. And to prevent that, she ends up learning some other type of magic herself. I don't know. I'm being very vague. I'm so sorry. I didn't particularly like this story. I didn't like the story that much. I didn't particularly like the character that much. Most of the story was very repetitive of thoughts that our main character was having in her head, because for a chunk of time, she was very jealous of her brother's magical abilities, but at the same time, she wanted to protect her brother. And so it was a lot of, I'm not as good as my brother is, and I wish I was like my brother. And it was just a lot of repetitive thoughts. And I didn't really like the characters in this story. I just didn't feel attached to any of them. And I didn't like it, to be perfectly honest. And I gave it 2.5 stars. Yes, 2.5 stars. So that's all I have to say about this one. It was kind of a bummer. It wasn't as good as I hoped it would be. All right, next of all, we've got Ghouls of Howlfair by Nick Tomlinson. I love this gold foiling on the name. It's so pretty. This story, we are following young historian Molly Thompson, and she is always trying to delve into different mysteries in her town of Howlfair. And most of the townspeople don't particularly like Molly that much, because whenever she's delving into things, she ends up digging up stuff on other people, and she ends up blabbing about it, and a lot of people are just mad at her. So they want her to stop digging into local legends, because that's mainly the thing she likes to do, is to dig into local legends and things like that. And her mom's like, you need to stop. Too many people are getting mad at you, so you need to quit. And she initially is like, fine, okay, this is what I love to do, but you know what, I'll back off because people are getting mad at me. But then she ends up in the middle of this conspiracy having to do with ghouls in her town, and the mayor, I think, using ghouls to do his dirty work, from what I remember. I don't remember the specific plot of this, but I do remember enjoying it. I loved our main character. It had sort of a very witty, banterish kind of writing style, which I particularly enjoy. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the vibe of City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab. It had sort of like that friend group vibe, and I don't know, it was a fun book, spooky, but fun and goofy, and I just loved writing style. The writing style is what drew me into this story, because I don't remember a lot of the story, to be perfectly honest, I don't. But I remember the vibe of this book and the writing style of this book being really, really fun. So this is a fantastically fun middle grade story. And again, for so many of the ones that are spooky, this is perfect for fall. So if you're in the mood to read more of a kind of like fun middle grade, slightly spooky story, this would be the one for you. And I gave this one 4 stars. So I liked it a lot. It was a good time. Okay, let's see. The rest of them I have to talk about. I got 4 more left. Hang with me. If you're still here, you're amazing. Thank you so much. All right, I've got 4 more books left. All 4 of them are ones that I do not have physically, but I will show you the picture. The next one is a different type of book than I normally read. I don't normally read contemporary fiction that much, and this is I would say middle grade contemporary fiction. It's called The Remarkable Journey of Coyote Sunrise by Dan Gemeinhart, I believe. In this story, we are following a young girl who lives on a school bus that has been outfitted to be a house, a home, a trailer. And her father is the one driving this bus, and they are just continually traveling the country, never fully settling down in one space. And the reason they're doing this is because I think like a couple years ago, this girl's mom and sister, or sisters, I can't remember, mom and sister, I think, were killed in a car crash. And her father, dealing with his grief, just decides he just wants to keep moving. And so they are just living on this bus, constantly moving. And then the girl finds out that a landmark in her town is going to be torn down and has a very special memory to her. And she wants to stop it from happening. But she's needing to figure out how to get her father to take them back to her hometown without him realizing it. So like all these different stops trying to get him back to their hometown. They have to travel across the country to get there. And they end up picking up some other people along the way that hitchhike. And it's a very heavy-hitting story. I did like it. I felt like it was a little bit long. And a lot of it for me was just because it's contemporary. I'm used to reading something that has like a spooky edge to it and more of a fantasy edge to it. And this was very much contemporary. And it was really good. It's just not my vibe. It's not something that I really, really love to read, that kind of more heavy-hitting thing. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't really remember much else about it. It was just okay for me. It was really good. Like the story premise was really good, and it was honestly sad too, but it was still really good. So if you like contemporary fiction, middle grade, go for it. It was pretty good. All right, let's go into a young adult mystery, and that is The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. I had heard a lot of good things about this, and I love YA mysteries, murder mysteries, thrillers. I love it. So I was like, okay, I gotta try this one out. This one, unfortunately, missed the mark a little bit for me. In this story, let me see if I can remember the premise of this one. We're following these cousins, and the entire family, their grandmother cut them off. Just basically sent them a note saying, you know what you did, and then cut them off. And they haven't heard from the grandmother. The grandmother is super rich. She owns this resort on a private island that people go to spend a lot of money to spend their summers there. It's like a whole town on this island. And for years upon years, the kids of this grandmother have not heard from her. And all of a sudden they get a letter, and the grandmother is inviting her grandchildren to come work at the resort for the summer. And all of the parents are like, you need to go so you can get back in her good graces so we can get, basically get on her will. And so all of the cousins who haven't seen each other in years aren't really friends. They end up all going to this island, and it's the whole mystery of why did the grandmother cut them off and all that kind of stuff. So it sounded interesting, but I didn't like the characters very much. They were all pretty teenagery, and I get it, it's young adult. I understand that. It's not written for my age range, it's written for young adult. But I felt like the characters weren't really that in depth. I just really wasn't liking them that much. The twist didn't hit me as hard as I thought they should have. I felt like the twist should have been like, whoa, no way, but they just didn't feel that way. Especially when I got to the end. At that point, I was like, okay, whatever, I'll go with it. It's kind of how I felt by the end of it. So it wasn't really my favorite. I didn't end up liking it as much as I thought I would. I gave it 3.5 stars, so it was okay. That's all the thoughts I have about it. So it wasn't terrible, wasn't great. Didn't really love the ending that much, but it's all good. All right. 2 more. We got this. Okay, where's the cover? There it is. Finally, I got around to reading Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is my first Elizabeth Acevedo book that I have read, and it was interesting. I did enjoy it. So Elizabeth Acevedo, at least in this book, and I think 1 or 2 other of her books, she writes her stories in verse. And this is one of those stories. We are following 2 different girls with the same father, but these 2 girls don't know that the other exists. One lives in one country, lives in Cuba, I think. Is that right? I think, or the Dominican, Cuba and I think New York are the 2 places that these girls live. Their father is flying back from Cuba or to Cuba. I think to Cuba, and the plane crashes and their father dies. And it's about these 2 girls finding out about their father and like the fact that he had 2 different families basically, and finding about each other, and it's all written in verse. I will say, most likely, as I kind of knew going into it, this book probably would have been better listening to the audiobook because Elizabeth Acevedo herself narrates it, and she is a slam poet, and I think it probably would have been a lot better and more heavy-hitting if I had heard her reading it instead of me reading it. Because I was personally reading it, the book felt long. To me, it was a long book to be reading in verse, personally. It was the first book I have read in verse, though, so it's not something I'm used to. So at first, when I first started reading it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. How interesting way to tell the story. This is really neat. And after a while, I started to get burnt out on everything being told in verse, and it started to feel long. So I enjoyed the story. I liked the characters. I liked the mystery behind it. I liked how heavy-hitting some parts were. I mean, it's emotional, of course. Their father dies, and then also you find out that the father had 2 different wives and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's baffling and hard-hitting and terrible, and it's sad because it's like you're angry at your dad, but at the same time, your dad's died, and you loved him. And so it's heavy-hitting and everything, but it just felt long to me. So I gave it 3.5 stars, lots of 3.5. So it was okay for me, not particularly my favorite. I do want to read more Elizabeth Acevedo, though. I would like to read The Fire on High, which that one is not written in verse. I think I might enjoy that a little bit more. All right, last book. Here we go. If I can pull up the right picture. This is one that sounded perfect for the summer because it kind of pulls together like a contemporary vibe with also some spookiness in there, which is something I particularly love. And that is Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things by Margie Fuston. I don't know. This story, we are following this young woman, and her father is dying of cancer, and her father absolutely love vampires. They're into watching all the vampire movies, all the vampire stories. It's something that they've bonded over. And in this particular story and world, vampires exist. At least years ago they did. There was a man that came out saying, I'm a vampire, and he proved it. And then some things happened with the media and everything, and the person kind of just reclused and disappeared. And so nobody has seen a real vampire in years, but has been hinted at, and there have been rumors that there are vampires in New Orleans. And so this girl decides she wants to go find a real vampire who can turn her father into a vampire and save his life. And so she goes to New Orleans, which was a trip she was originally going to take with her father. It was something they'd always wanted to do together, and her father was too sick to go, and he said, I want you to do this before I die. So she goes to New Orleans and decides she's on a mission, she's going to find a vampire. So that's what the story is about, is her going to New Orleans and trying to find a vampire. And I liked the premise. I really did. The main character, I wasn't a huge fan of because she had a lot of repeating thoughts. I understood her thoughts, and I know as human beings, we do have a lot of repetitive thoughts. Her repetitive thought was she felt like she wasn't allowed to have fun while she was on this trip because that wouldn't be loving to her father. If her father's suffering and dying, then she shouldn't be happy. She shouldn't be allowed to be happy. And so anytime she would find herself in a joyful moment or feeling happy, she would get angry at herself about it. And it was kind of that constant spiral. The story felt too long to me. I wasn't a huge fan of how long and repetitive a lot of things were. I did really enjoy it though. I enjoyed where the story went. I enjoyed where we ended up by the end. But I gave this one 3 stars. So it was middle of the road. I liked the concept. I just didn't end up liking her main character that much. And it was just okay. It just wasn't what I was hoping it would be. But it was still good. So there you go. Okay, you guys, we made it. That was 13 books. It's a lot of books. I'll probably be coming out with another recent reads wrap-up type thing relatively soon because I have even more books to talk about. But hopefully this wasn't too boring. I'm sorry this video is like 30 minutes long, but I tried to be quick. Let me know down below, please, if you've read any of these books. Let me know what you thought about them, whether you agree with me or not. On this side of the video over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel and follow me on my book journey. On this side of the video over here is another video if you want to watch another one right now. But thank you so much for watching. You rock, and don't forget to keep reading. Bye.